Richard here. Last video we talked about safety. Well, this time I mentioned to you that I was going to talk about the subject of meters. And as a homeowner, what kind of meter should you buy? What do you really need? As you look through this video, you're going to notice that we see all kinds of meters. So what is one that's appropriate for you that is actually going to fill your needs? And to help you out, I've actually got a few of the meters. These are some of the meters that I have in stock that I use with my work. There's also various testers, such as this. And of course, a little voltage sniffer. So what we're going to do is we'll discuss these meters. I'm going to show you a bunch of meters. And then we're going to show how to use a meter and then help you determine what type of meter would be best for you to buy. Because there's no need, when you're spending money, you don't want to overspend. There's no need to buy something that you may never ever use. Because if you get into a meter that's so complicated, the more than likely you're already into an area that perhaps you shouldn't be touching certain things. And at the same time, you don't want to underbuy. You don't want to buy a meter that is so cheap that it's unreliable. Remember, the meter, this is your line of defense between you and the electricity. And you're trying to determine, is it safe to get near it? So, let's watch. See what you can learn from this. In the last video, I mentioned regards to electrical meters. A lot of homeowners have wondered, what kind of electrical meter should I buy? And it could be overwhelming. For example, when you are buying an electrical meter, what would you get for your home? We have found that when you walk into one of the big box stores and you walk into their department that has all the electrical meters, it could be overwhelming. Or perhaps you could even go to an electrical supply house. Well, which one would you buy? Which one would I recommend? So what I'm going to try to do is give you some pointers on what to look for when you get a meter and something that would be adequate for a homeowner. Because there's no need to overbuy, but at the same time you want your money to be spent wisely. So I will give you some things to think about. And just so you know, I'm not promoting any particular brand of meters, but I will mention some things to keep in mind. So let's take a look at all these meters and then determine which may be the best meter for you. So let's discuss some meters. We have the various type. And one of the first ones I want to mention is what we refer to as a little voltage sniffer. Now these little meters, this little thing is very handy. But when you're relying on this to test electricity and you're going to work on a device, of course, it's always best to always turn it off. You can always turn the power off. Go find a breaker, whatever it is, make sure you get the power off to what you're working on. You don't want to take a chance. So they use this little meter, and I'm going to show you a situation where if you're using this and relying on it to protect your life, you may be in danger. And yet, it's not that I don't like the meter. I have used it. But I also rely on something else as well. So we have that. Then you got the little meters like this. And in reality, it lets you know whether something is, this little tester here, whether something is wired correctly or not. And you can use it like this one. They also have them for arc fault breakers or arc fault circuits. It'll trip them out. And this one here, it gives you the correct wiring setup, lets you know if it's correct. And it even has it where if you flip the little switch over here and you have it on in another room, you can hear it beeping so that you know you can flip off that circuit. But definitely a very handy little tool. Nice to have, especially in a homeowner checking out and also testing your GFCIs regularly. And then the other thing is a meter. Now, of course, this one here does numerous things. And that's the various settings. We'll talk about that. It tests AC volts, DC volts, which is direct volts. Say you're checking batteries. And that's a direct line, direct voltage. And of course, you can use it for checking continuity and also the ohms. For example, you're needing to test something to make sure how much resistance there is in a line, and then also the capability of testing some amps. And one of the things I like about the amp thing is, especially as a homeowner, you may want to consider something similar to this. Now, it doesn't have to be this particular brand. I'm not here endorsing any brands in particular, but I will make some recommendations because I do find that you want something that's going to be reliable. And remember, the whole idea is for you to be able to save money. Because, let's face it, you don't always want to be able to, you may want to be able to do something yourself. You don't always want to pay perhaps the fees an electrician has to charge. And so this way, if you get something that's reliable, you might be able to do a lot of testing, getting a lot of things done, and perhaps save you some of those extra expenses. Makes your money go a lot further. And so that's what I'm trying to do, is to help you. True, it's how I make a living, but I would love to be able to help you as well. And so, good meter. And I'll mention a few brands that I really like. And the biggest reason why is because I find them to be very reliable. So let's zoom in closer, and we're going to watch something in action. And I'm going to show you some of the things about a meter. So pay attention, please. So here is a typical outlet you're going to find in everybody's homes. And that's where I mentioned this little device, this little tester. And so when you plug it in, it'll tell you whether it's wired correctly or not. Now, as you noticed, this receptacle is hot. Now, this is why I want to show you about these little voltage snifters, where at times they may not be reliable. So here's our little sniffer. Turn it on. Nothing. And yet, when I plug this in, it's hot. And notice here, if I get close to there, I can get it. But see, when I was touching up here, I could not get it to work. And you could think that that circuit is dead. So that's one of the reasons why these right here, you have to be careful with. You can't rely on them, especially if you're thinking about it to protect your life. Then we got this meter here. Now, so alternating volts, AC volts. And so if I was to plug my leads in, and then you can see the volts. It says 123.6. Now I'm going to show you something too about a meter. Now when you buy a meter, it also will come on the ends of these leads, some little caps that flip on here. These little things protect you. Actually, it protects you from what they call arc flash. But what it does is it makes it to where you can't short it out on something. And I'll show you why that's important. Let's pull the cover off here. So I'm gonna, here's our little sniffer. See, now I can tell. See, up in here it wouldn't read. There, now we're getting close. 123.6. Now, sometimes it's good to have those on for safety reasons, especially if you're in an older home. A lot of the older homes used metal boxes. And if you were to go like this and touch that, and then this touch the edge of a metal box, what would happen is it would actually, you'd get a spark. It would blow out on you. So the reason why these are important, so here I am, careful with here. And that's why I wanted to show you that. So now I'm going to discuss just a couple of meters. Things to think about. So when you buy your meter, you make sure you get something that you're going to be happy with for the long run. Makes your money go further. As an example, here's a couple of meters I use. Now, I'm showing you brands that are very common. One of the things to keep in mind when you're buying a meter is to buy a brand that is well known. Keep that in mind when you're buying a meter, that sometimes it's not always best to go with an off brand because it's cheap. One of the things to consider is that first of all, you want to be able to measure voltage, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to determine, is the power on or off? And then at the same time, one of the things that's nice is to know how much is that piece of equipment, how much is it drawing? What do we mean by that? How much wattage is it using? How many amps is it using? And so that's why I recommend a nice little clamp-on meter. They have some that just slip over, but I like a little clamp-on meter. And then that way you can see how much electricity, how much amperage is actually being drawn on that wire. And it helps you determine. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to write me if you have any questions, because you can determine if your wire size is the appropriate size. The biggest problem that happens, I see a lot of times, is where people will actually overload a circuit. They'll put too many items on a circuit. I've had people come up and say, well, can't we just put in a larger breaker? Well, you could put in a larger breaker, true, but the problem is your wire's not big enough. And then what'll happen is that wire is eventually going to burn, and it can burn down your home, perhaps when you're asleep. See, so that's why it's good to have a decent meter. This one here also measures direct volts. So say you got some batteries. A lot of things now we use batteries for. Well, you can check that. And you can check to see if a wire is good from one end to the next. And that's what this little thing makes, that noise, little continuity tester. You can see if there's continuity from one end to the other. Make sure that wire is not broken somewhere along the way. So when it comes to buying a meter, you should be able to buy a meter, definitely a really good meter, for about $75. You can get them cheaper. I actually saw some today when I went into some of those stores, like, because they're constantly coming out with new products. And it's a nice little assortment, a nice little kit that they had there. And they were anywhere from $25, $40. But I do recommend, if at all possible, get something that will read amps, because it may be that you as a homeowner can say, I want to know how much the hot water heater is pulling. You just clip that on there. Watch one of my videos that shows you what gauge to set it on amperage. And then you clip it on there, and you can see what your amperage draw is. So hopefully that helps. And the idea is, we want to save you money, but we don't want you to get hurt. Thanks for watching.